What's up, YouTube? So before we get started with this video, on first take, they're going to be talking about, should James Harden bear the responsibility for them not doing as good as they should be doing against the Golden State Warriors? So let's see what they have to say about that.
How much of the Rockets' fate is on James Harden's shoulders?
Listen, I think some of it is on his shoulders. There's no question about it. He's the star. He's the franchise player for the Houston Rockets. But me personally, Coach Max, I'm really getting sick and tired of his name being the only name that's coming up. You've got a point guard in Chris Paul that just re-upped for $160 million. Last time I checked, when we talked about the big-time lineup that the Houston Rockets had, clearly his name was in the mix. We should expect more from him. I'm thinking about Mike D'Antoni. For years, we've lauded his offensive brilliance and what he's brought to the table instead of really just establishing an evolution in the NBA from an offensive perspective. But clearly there's been something missing defensively, why this great offensive-minded coach has still never coached in an NBA Finals. And then, of course, it's Daryl Morey, because obviously you're the architect of the system. You hired Mike D'Antoni. You got James Harden there. You went out and got CP3, etc. What are you going to have to show for it? I understand you're not losing. You were the number one seed last year. You went to the Western Conference Finals, Game 7. By no means am I accusing Daryl Morey of having failed at his job. That would be asinine. But he is on the record saying Golden State is who we shoot for. That's who we go after. He built this roster with them in mind. And ultimately, if you come up short, we have to ask ourselves why. Is it just about Harden, or is it about the system you employ? Is it about defense? Even though with Bizdilic there, obviously your defense has improved dramatically over the last 2 years. Do you have enough? Are you capable of doing enough? Should you have lost Trevor Ariza last year, even though you acquired Kenneth Faried? All of these things are question mark, and I'm only saying that to say Harden matters, but it's not just about him. The coach, the GM, and that other star that you got, they matter too.
So I'm definitely going to have to say that, I'm sorry, but the whole regular season, James Harden can ball out. He can get 32 consecutive games where he's scoring 30 points or more. There's no team that he faced last year that he didn't get 30 points on. I mean, he's looking at being MVP. He was MVP the year before, and all of a sudden now he gets to the playoffs and falls apart. He completely falls apart when the playoffs start. I'm sorry, you don't get to get a pass because you're not doing as well as you should be doing, and we should be looking at Chris Paul and a couple other guys on the squad. You're supposed to be the MVP, okay? You can do it during the regular season. You can do what you're supposed to do then, but all of a sudden now you come to the playoffs and you absolutely fall apart, and now we're supposed to be looking at everybody else. When before that, 3 weeks ago, it was all Harden. James Harden could do it himself. He can carry the whole team. You got them to being the number one seed almost. So I don't understand all of a sudden now. I mean, you beat the Golden State Warriors 3 times during the regular season. So I don't understand all of a sudden now there's a difference. All of a sudden now you need help. Now Chris Paul should be getting your back, and we need to look at Chris Paul. And personally, I think Chris Paul's done bad too. He needs to step up his game. It shouldn't be just Harden, but James Harden. This is what happens when you're going to be considered the best player. When you're the MVP, the reigning MVP, this is what comes with it. This is what comes with it. And you guys have had a whole year to prepare to play the Golden State Warriors, and here you go, you choke again. You did even worse than what you did last year. You came in choking and flopping and doing all this other type of stuff like you're scared, like you already know what's going to happen. So, I'm sorry, you don't get a pass, James Harden. This is what comes with being the MVP. It's all or nothing. All or nothing. Because you aren't going to split MVP with Chris Paul, okay? So, Chris Paul, he should be doing more, but you know what? He's not looking at being MVP. You are. And you're the one who's falling apart. So, let's keep going.
About James Harden. Look, I mean, and both comment, of course, that's a hyperbolic comment. It's a basketball team, but if they want to advance, James Harden's got to be the MVP when it matters most. I don't see why he can't be. He's the MVP the last 3 seasons. His name is the only constant name. Is it James Harden or KD? Is it James Harden or Steph? Is it Harden or LeBron? Harden or the Greek Freak? It's always Harden right there until you need him most. And then he's not the MVP. Be the best player in the world when your team isn't hitting shots. And I think he can do it. I think it's in there somewhere. LeBron wasn't born into the NBA that way. He had to develop that way. Maybe.
So I definitely think James Harden can't do it. Like I said, when you're called the MVP, there's no excuses when it's time for you to shine. I would rather James Harden only get 20 points a night and have no triple doubles or whatever and do whatever to each team, 30 points here and there, and then get to the playoffs and start balling, then look like a superstar MVP during the regular season, but then you just fall apart in the playoffs because after that it doesn't mean anything. And we'll get to the point we see this over and over and over where James Harden is choking and he's not learning anything. You haven't learned from what happened last year and what to do. It seems like this year he's taking the approach of let me just do super flopping and maybe that'll work. So that stems in with his coaching too. His coach, they need to come up with a better scheme, a better way. And they said that they built the Houston Rockets to be able to compete with the Golden State Warriors. But I don't see, they don't have shooters all over the place. They don't have, I mean, they just don't really have the tools necessarily to take care of the Golden State Warriors. And trying to do the same thing that you did last year, which even worse with the flopping, that means you're not learning anything. You're not learning anything. So, I mean, what happened to the past 3 games the last year that you guys won, even though you lost the last game during the regular season? What happened then? You guys can't mimic that, watch film from that? So, I don't know. Let's keep going.
Harden can do the same thing. As far as your criticism of the system and Daryl Morey, I think that's completely misplaced. The fact is, we have these expectations now precisely because Daryl Morey, started with nothing really, identified James Harden, that guy. He's being undervalued. I'm going to make him a superstar. He is a superstar. We just got to bring it out of him. They were playing well and they were a threat, but just kind of like a puncher. D'Antoni, his system. Remember Rick Pitino's bomb squad back in the day, Stephen A., Mark Jackson, and Trent Tucker, and Johnny Newman, and all those guys? D'Antoni said they had the right idea. They had the right idea. Shoot more threes. He doubled and tripled down on taking a shot which has become a high percentage, high yield shot.
I'll let Stan Van Gundy go
So the system, the fact that they play so many good yielding bets, and the fact that Daryl Morey identified an underrated player and showed that he's in fact a superstar is the reason we're even having the conversation about the Rockets. To then turn around and say, well, see, the system's not good. No, they just don't have KD and Steph and Clay.
Well, you could say that if they were, getting absolutely smashed on and they weren't being able to take care of business during the regular season, but they took care of business during the regular season. You can see what James Harden can do during the regular season. This is why people are talking about being MVP again. But all of a sudden now you get to the playoffs and you can't do what you were doing during the regular season, and you know it's coming. Everybody knows it's coming, and you're not prepared. You're not ready to do what you need to do during the playoffs. There's just no excuse. There's no excuse. And it's getting old, James Harden. Like I said in other videos, it's getting old. We already know what you can do in the regular season, but what are you going to do when it counts? And here you go, choking again. So after a while, it's going to get so old and nobody is going to really care too much about you because we already know, again, you're choked when it counts. And you know it. And it shows from game 1 when it was nothing but Flop City. And now you got your eyes clawed out with the Tiger Claw. And I bet you that's going to be his excuse for the way you walk. If my eyes weren't Tiger Clawed out, I would have had a better game. I would have had a better series. Even though you lost the first game. So I don't know. Let's keep going.
And Draymond, the reason they can compete with a team that's better than them is because of their system.
Look, I think what happens, and the reason that Harden draws the criticism he does, is the way they play, is they put the ball in James Harden's hands every single time down the floor, and he has to hit a home run. No singles, no doubles. He's got to hit a home run every time. It's either a Harden pick and roll or it's a Harden isolation. There's very little movement in their offense. It's very stagnant. Everybody stands around. The entire defense loads up on him, and he's got to try to make a play. He's been able to do it successfully. It's why they've won at a high level. It's why they've played well offensively. But that is going to put everything on one guy's shoulders. Yes, the other guys have to step up. I think Eric Gordon has played well. They need more guys. But every clip you see, the only guy moving is James Harden. And if
So, yeah, exactly. So the only guy, they've made it this far with their bread and butter being James Harden. They made it all throughout the regular season and everything. So you can't just stop that once you get to their playoffs. It worked in the regular season. You got to keep doing that. You can't just all of a sudden switch the script or flip the script because all of a sudden now in the playoffs, guys aren't going to quite be able to do that. They're not going to be able to do that. If James Harden was the main one getting the ball, well, then you guys are going to have to follow suit and keep doing that in the playoffs. Don't all of a sudden fall apart now, and all of a sudden James Harden needs some help, yada, yada, yada. And also, as far as them, the Houston Rockets being designed to be able to compete with the Golden State Warriors, that's another mistake because, like I said, they only have James Harden. Everybody knows James Harden's their bread and butter with the little brother, Chris Paul. So everybody knows James Harden's not going to have enough to be able to take care of Golden State because he's gonna choke, or he's just not going to have enough. So I don't know. Let's keep going.
Capella or Nene sets a screen and rolls to the basket. Everybody else stands there. It's hard to hit home runs against the best teams in a long playoff run.
Coach, let me come to you with this because I'm not going to get into it with Max Kellerman with you on this set because I need more time to deal with his nonsensical argument because he's making the argument, okay, in terms of the system that got Houston to this point. So in other words, you want to hold Harden accountable because what works in the regular season doesn't work in the postseason, but you don't want to hold Daryl Morey and Mike D'Antoni for something that worked in the regular season but doesn't work in the... I'll get to you on another segment. I'm not going to do it with Coach here. But I will say this, Coach. Chris Paul is shooting 47% from the field and averaging 17.5 points per game in the first 2 games of this series. Did anybody think that maybe you need to give him the ball more? Eric Gordon's shooting 50% from the field. Does he not need to get the ball more? So when we're talking...
That's correct, Stephen A. The ball probably does need to be distributed to other people that might be doing good or better or, their shots falling. But guess what, Stephen A. Smith? Guess what? That's not how they got here. That's not the system they're playing. Their system is give the ball to James Harden, and supposedly he's going to hit a home run. He did it all year, but all of a sudden here comes the playoffs, and he can't do it. So don't look to start passing the ball now because this is what got you guys there. Okay? So, I mean, James Harden, you're going to have to hit home runs. You've been doing it this whole year. You're the MVP, so it's all going to fall on you. This is what happens. This is what happens when you want to be the MVP. So let's keep going.
About systemically, things that are happening systemically in terms of the Houston Rockets. I'm thinking about those supplementary parts because my position, Coach, has been religiously that ISO play is not going to work come postseason against an elite team in a 7-game series. To that, you say what, Stan Van?
So let me say this real quick. Of course, ISO ball is not going to work when you give the ball just to one person, but they've had 2 years to figure that out. So they should have learned that in last year in the playoffs in Game 7, and they couldn't pull it off. They had a whole year to be able to fix that and get a system in and to be able to accommodate for whatever they lacked in being able to beat the Golden State Warriors. And like I said, they beat the Golden State Warriors 3 out of 4 times during the regular season, I believe. So I don't understand what's changed. Use the same type of thing. And you got to use what got you there. And if your bread and butter is James Harden, well, then that's what you're going to have to live and die with. And anybody else, Chris Paul and all that, he might not show up. But the pressure's not on Chris Paul to show up. It's on James Harden. That's your guy's bread and butter. Okay, so don't start changing suit now. You got to stick with the suit. So let's keep going.
No, I think you have a great point there. I mean, I also will go to the Philly series against Toronto. If you're going to stand around and isolate, Toronto's defense is great. Golden State's defense is great. Even Houston's defense is great. Everybody loads up, looks at the guy with the ball. When you have to go and play against movement, okay, it becomes a little bit more difficult and opportunities are created. Philly did a better job the other day staying with their movement against Toronto.